Hi and welcome back to Cheeky Crypto. My name is Nick and today we are going to dive into VeChain, specifically the price action of VET. Guys, as we get into this video, if you find it useful and informative, then do go ahead and hit that like button. I really do appreciate it. If you're new, make sure you've subscribed, hit the bell, tapped on all notifications, and you won't miss another VeChain update. Guys, with all that said, done and out of the way, let's get into a little bit of VeChain and find out what's been going on with VET. Right, we're going to start here. This is VeChain to the USDT. We are looking at the weekly chart and Binance is the data source. Now, we want to spend a little bit of time here on this weekly chart just to kind of talk through what is going on and why there's some important information we need to communicate across. The first thing is to acknowledge that a lot of people in the space have been talking about VeChain not doing a lot. The price action is really slow. It does trade sideways while other coins are mooning, right? This is the common narrative that we keep hearing about on the channel. Now, let me just go back to VeChain. This is the common narrative that we keep hearing about on the channel. Now, the thing is with that is it's not actually very factual. Time is a bit of a beast, right? Ultimately, it's the hardest thing to actually gauge, and no one really knows when things are going to peak out. But when you actually zoom out of your charts and you take away those hourly views, those 15-minute views, and those really small time frames, and you actually focus in on what matters, the bigger picture, it's actually hard to say that VeChain trades sideways or doesn't do anything. We've actually seen over 18,000% in gains since March of 2020 through to April of 2021. That was 399 days with 18,295% in gains. That to me is not trading sideways. That is significant growth of the VeChain crypto. Now, obviously, this is during a bull run, and it's a significant opportunity for many investors to get involved with VeChain. During the crash of March of 2020 was a significant opportunity to purchase huge amounts of VeChain at a discounted rate. The same could be said for the Wave 2 correction. Here was where you could accumulate VeChain at a very reasonable rate of around 1 cent. In some instances, a little bit lower than that. During Wave 3, we've obviously seen this thing really pick up pace and actually set an all-time high of 27.9 cent. A very reasonable all-time high before the correction set in. With this being said though, there is a lot more growth still to come here for VeChain. The bull run is not over despite a lot of that FUD and those narratives that were being shielded not that long ago. What you're actually looking at here is an Elliott theory 5 impulse waves to the upside, and all we were in was the correction wave 4. And for anyone who has been paying attention to the channel from, well, pretty much April to now, we'll know that we haven't changed our opinion on this. We've been in a bull run the entire time. This is just a corrective period, which again is understandable when we consider some other metrics that we're going to go into in a moment. Now, obviously, with VeChain gaining 18,295% so far, you might be wondering what's left in the tank. Well, that's easy to kind of tell you as well. We are expecting that VeChain will gain up to basically up to about $1 level in value. Now that might seem crazy high or crazy low to some people in the space, but it's actually backed on the technical data. When we take the all-time high and the correction of the low of wave 4, that actually does print us to predicting that the price expectation for VeChain during this 5th wave would end at about $1.01. So with knowing that, we can easily go ahead and actually just show you the price expectation from the current value through to $1.01. It gives us approximately 943% more gains on the table still to be had. Now, if you were a VeChain investor, but you were buying at the previous all-time high, I think that would then show you approximately another 250% in gains on the table. That would be in profit at that point. So no matter where you kind of got in at this point in the market, you should still end up in profit, at least in my opinion. Now, I am not a financial advisor, nor is Chris, so it's important that you do your own research. There is no substitute for all this. Listen to what I'm saying in this video, take it away, do your own research, and dig in deep, and see if you come up to the same conclusions. Right. Now we obviously understand that we are looking at trying to achieve a $1 VET token in this particular cycle. That might be quarter 4, it might be quarter 1 of 2022. As I said, timing is the hardest thing to gauge. The other thing that we need to acknowledge on this weekly chart is the stochastic relative strength index. Now, The reason that this is really important to understand is we have to acknowledge that we are oversold. We've been oversold at multiple points during this bull run so far. And we want to draw connections between the candles that we see in our charts and, of course, this stochastic relative strength index. The first thing that we need to acknowledge is the low point of March 2020. This actually shows us at the point of oversold down here, where we reached 0.8 on the stochastic relative strength index. Anything lower than 20 is oversold, so basically anything down here is undervalued. Now, when we got to the top of wave 1, we were overbought, and then when we got into the low of wave 2, we were oversold again, right the way down at the bottom here, where we were 0.2. So again, during this correction wave in the wave 2 area, we were oversold in the same way that we were when we started the bull run. Now, what does this mean for wave 4? Well, wave 4 over here, again, all those candles, low points, major correction as it is seen by many, also brings that stochastic relative strength index all the way down here at 1. Okay, it's seen as low as 1.06. So again, an oversold area, anything lower than 20 is oversold, undervalued. So the expectations now, as we had seen previously in terms of wave 1, we saw go from an oversold to an overbought area. Wave 2 from oversold to overbought, again peaking out in wave 3. Oversold where wave 4 is right now. We're going to go after that dollar level in wave 5 as we go up to overbought on our stochastic relative strength index. Now, obviously, this is a weekly view, so it's going to take time. It's going to take weeks upon months before we actually do see this. As I said, Q4, Q1 of 2022. Ultimately, those are the timeframes that historically we've kind of stuck to, but obviously, it's really difficult to gauge how long things actually take. We could see a shorter bull run. We might see a longer bull run. We won't know until things actually start to really get off to the races a little bit more than they have done. At the moment, we've seen a decent recovery, but there's still a lot of work to do. And we're going to get into that on the hourly chart in just a moment. So on this weekly chart, I just really wanted to focus in on VeChain has had significant growth so far. There is still more growth to come, and if you did buy the high, you should still end up in profit by the end of the bull run if you pay attention to the channel. Right, with that said, let's jump on down into our daily view. Now, the daily view does give us the Fibonacci retracement tool. So again, taking the high of the all-time high for VeChain and, of course, the low from the correction wave 4, this is what gives us that prediction of $1.01. These actually give us several different areas that we want to be focusing in on. The first one is 42 cents. That's the first price target. The second price target is 64 cents. The third price target, 87 cents. And then the final target is $1.01. These are key milestones in VeChain's growth direction, and we should be paying attention to them. Right. Now we understand where VeChain is going and we know how we got there, it's also important to acknowledge some major areas that we are targeting. The first one that we want to really focus in on is 21.5 cents. This is this yellow box area just here. This yellow box is the area that we want to see a closed candle just above, and preferably we want it to be a weekly closed candle. A weekly closed candle above this area is a big bull signal, signaling in fifth wave, and a massive price surge should follow. But getting to this yellow box area is not going to be simple. There's a lot of resistance between here and there. So it's going to take a while. It's not going to be straight candles all the way up to the top, and we have to be patient in order to see this come in. The other thing that we obviously have to acknowledge is the buy zone at the bottom here. For all you members out there, if you were paying attention and were looking to purchase up VeChain, then ultimately these areas were your friend. These are where you spent a little bit of time into the zone where you could accumulate a decent position in VeChain ahead of the fifth wave. And like I said, we're heading to $1, so you'll be looking at about a 10x on that position. Right, the other thing that we need to acknowledge on this daily chart is the fact that the stochastic is actually overbought. Unlike the weekly chart that is oversold, we are in an overbought situation on the daily. That does mean that we need to see a correction happen here on this daily chart in order to allow us to continue the growth to the upside. Now, this correction could be a shallow correction. It does not need to be steep, and we could only see a correction of about 1 cent. But we should be prepared to see it. Ultimately, when you're overbought in the way that we are on this stochastic relative strength index, we have to expect a correction at some point. We've sustained it so far for a series of days, but at some point we will be pulling down and we will be having this correction. This correction may actually just be a sideways trade in a key brand, for example. And I'll show you what that looks like on our daily chart, on our hourly chart in just a moment. Right. So guys, it's important that we obviously acknowledge that there was a downward trend. This trend has now changed and it is now looking like a pretty decent recovery here for VeChain, in line with what Bitcoin is doing. The overbought stochastic relative strength index also is an interesting flag, because if Bitcoin does go ahead and surge above 42k, we're going to sustain an overbought VeChain for a little bit longer, which would mean that we'd have a more severe correction at a later date. We have to be mindful that actually we would almost want to be having healthy corrections on the route to the upside than significant pullbacks or large time frames of trading sideways. Right, with that being said, let's jump into our hourly chart and talk about what's going on here. Now, the fantastic news about our hourly chart, guys, is that we have actually broken an area of resistance. So previously what we were doing was basically having a breakout event down here of the 8.3 cent area. We found resistance up here at 9.2. We back tested and found support of 8.3. And then we rallied up again, broke the 9.2, and that's where we are right now. So breaking and piercing through the 9.2 cent resistance line now puts us in a really interesting zone for VeChain. We're trading between 9.8 and 9.2. Now, we're having a little bit of a correction on the overbought area here on the stochastic, but ultimately what we'll try to do is actually find a back test of this 9.2 cent area. This correction could see us a little bit of a minor correction to the daily, but a pretty significant correction here on the hourly. So what we're looking to try to do is basically find a bounce from our 9.2 area, come up towards our 9.8, and basically continue a sideways trade between these two areas. This would allow us to basically correct our daily RSI. And this correction would then allow us to have more price discovery in the long term. So what we don't want to do is basically continue this run up here and find that we're going up too far, only to come all the way down here and have a steeper correction and find resistance again. So what we want is basically a healthier sideways trade and allow us for a healthy break to the upside. So on this hourly chart, it's important that we acknowledge we are also overbought with a correction in mind, in the same way that we are looking at our daily chart. Now, obviously, when we actually zoom out here on our hourly chart, we can see the amount of work that we have ahead of us. All of these orange lines are resistance lines that we have to turn into support before we can even get to our yellow box area. The closed candle above 21.5 cent will really be a strong signal to take us to the next step. But in that journey to that yellow box area, we're going to have a lot of breakthroughs and obviously back tests and lots of corrections on that journey. It's going to take weeks and months before we get up here, but once we do, VeChain will be off to the races and we'll soon start seeing significant price discovery and new all-time highs being set for this altcoin. And my opinion is ultimately going really long on VeChain. We've spoken about this on so many occasions, but VeChain is one of those projects that has so much possibility and utility. It's a project that is 1 in a million, in my opinion. Ultimately, there's only one 5-star blockchain service provider in the world, and that is VeChain. It's heavily integrated by massive enterprises around the globe. This particular project has a lot of clout with governments as well, in the same way that you see it with Cardano. If I was a betting man, I would say that this is a project that I wouldn't want to miss out on. With that being said, it's important that you do your own research. With so many things changing in the crypto space almost daily, it's important that you stay up to date. And guys, if you have found this video useful and informative, then do go ahead and hit that like button. I really do appreciate it. Of course, if you're new and you want to stay up to date with everything VeChain, then do go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell, and tap on all notifications. This way, you'll never miss another VeChain update. Guys, with this said, done, and out of the way, I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and I'll catch you in the next one.